as members of this Joint Select Committee to earnestly and openly bring your expertise, your questions, and your lived experience to the discussion. Let us challenge assumptions, test ideas, and build recommendations that are practical, compassionate, and unapologetically strong. Together, we can reshape the narrative, not just of law, but of safety, of dignity, of healing for every Jamaican who is affected by the monster of domestic violence. I look forward to our discussions in the upcoming months as we work swiftly to complete the review during this new fiscal year, the coming fiscal year. I invite each member of this committee to honor the survivors who came before us by refusing to settle for anything less than real change. And I want to thank you all for coming here today. I want to indicate that the committee will invite submissions relevant to its deliberations, written or by appearance before the committee. We will operate in accordance with the relevant standing orders of Parliament. We will establish subcommittees or working groups where required. And we will ensure that our work is completed in the shortest possible time, that we review this piece of legislation in a very comprehensive way, and that we move swiftly towards having up-to-date, relevant piece of legislation that will address domestic violence in an impactful way. So at this time, I wish to invite comments from members online as well as members present in the chamber. I don't see any hands online, but I would like to invite Minister Johnson-Smith to make her comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your continued leadership on this issue and for convening this committee, which has such important work before us. Madam Chair, this is our third time at this, so I'm hoping that it will be the charm. I very much appreciate your emphasis on the word swift, to not only ensure that we undertake comprehensive work that is properly informed by the practical side. You have raised the questions as to what is working operationally in the system, what needs to be fixed. And I think it's important for us to recognize that that this is a part of the intent. It is not to legislate only in form, but to ensure that the changes which we make to the legislation are real and impactful and fundamentally change the treatment of domestic violence in Jamaica, as well as provide a platform for the cultural change that must accompany the effectiveness of any legislative approach that addresses human behavior such as this. I want to include specifically reference to the changes to the last amendments made, and to say that it was a good thing that we were able to harvest those very clear and low-hanging fruit which deliver direct and impactful changes like the turning in of the gun, like the move from 10,000 to 1 million. Very real and direct changes. And it will be good for us to know if the amendments are flowing in the courts in the way that we intended and hoped, so that if there are changes which need to become a part of this, any improvements which need to become a part of this legislation, we're able to so do. Madam Chair, I wanted to just raise that I think there are maybe one or two issues that don't sit in this act, but which are directly related and which we could probably think about harvesting as well if the committee is minded. But it strikes me that in the other legislative, the matters which we still continue to await, which are the subject of other legislative processes, like the changes that were agreed in Joint Select Committee to marital rape and the circumstances under which it can be prosecuted. Could that be considered to be a consequential amendment under this process if it is that the Sexual Offences Act does not find its amendments, rather don't find their way before the Parliament in this legislative year? There are a few others that I am on which I'm similarly minded to think that we can lift them from where they sit, where they were agreed by Joint Select Committee, subject of reports that were approved in both houses, to see whether one of the things that this committee can do to be impactful is to identify those and bring them here. And I ask this, Madam Chair, not only as you suggest that we do this work in honor of the survivors who have made it clear that they will accept nothing other than fundamental change, and with whom I stand 100%, as I'm sure we all do, but also those who have not survived, that we honor the memory of those who the system has failed, that the system will continue to fail if it is that we don't change the culture and if we don't change the laws. So, Madam Chair, you know I struggled with acceptance of your request that I join this committee just because the schedule is so, but I'm committed to this process. So I want to offer you that commitment and wish us and the women and men of Jamaica, but primarily the women who this affects, principally, the success of our efforts here.
Thank you so much, Minister Johnson-Smith. I do appreciate that you have a very demanding schedule, but you agreed to sit on this committee, and we really appreciate it, really appreciate it. I want to invite Dr. Brownberg to make an intervention here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I believe that this is work that's long overdue, even though, well, we have been talking about it, regardless of the amendments we have made recently, that there's still work to be done. And I am pleased that at the beginning of this session that we are actually doing it. I want to just remind, although I'm sure you're aware, that for this first meeting, I was expecting to have a copy of the bill, a copy of the Joint Select Committee minutes, the report from the Joint Select Committee, notwithstanding its circulation previously. But as a member of this committee, I was expecting to have that before me today. I also was expecting that this would have been, for the first committee, simply procedural matters. It's now 15 minutes to 5, and I know that you are well aware that Minister Camilla Johnson-Smith is not the only one with a very pressed schedule. And therefore, I do not have much more that I can spend today for this meeting, because, and I understand why we have run late. I mean, we were discussing important issues that required the kind of detail and time that we spent. But I'm saying it because I am going to run out, and I don't want it to be misunderstood, right? That I am committed, but I duty-bound to leave at 5, but just to say that I'm hoping that we will get the additional documents so that we can peruse that and so that we can have that for the work that is to come. Madam Chair, there is absolutely no doubt that in a country where femicide is as high as it is, where we struggle with issues of sexual abuse and domestic violence, that this is important work to be done. And thank you very much. And I'm certainly looking forward to the work that we will do in the future. I'm not even going to spend much more than to say that I'm looking forward to the work that is to come.
Thank you, Member Bromberg. We will make available copies of the report on the committee that had met earlier. But we are treating this as a new work, new committee, and we can draw on as much research information as we wish, and Parliament will make it. The committee clerk will ensure that those are made available to us. I also want to indicate that Mrs. Petrona Seeley Brown from the Office of the Parliamentary Counsel, she's online, and at some point she may be able to speak to the possibility of consequential amendments to other acts, right? Yeah, so, right. So as we engage in exchanges here, we can consider that, as well as Miss Blackwood, who is the ministry's attorney. She's also here. Mrs. Robinson is also a good resource, which we can draw. At this point, I would like to invite Senator Cavan Gale to make his intervention.
Thank you, Minister. You know, when the last amendments were made in 2023, it so happened that I was presiding over the Senate in the absence of the President and the Deputy President. So I had the opportunity to apply my signature to those amendments. But there was a little bit of jealousy because in presiding, you never had the opportunity to participate in the debate. And there was that jealousy invited my presence to be part of this committee. I think this piece of legislation is critical. Domestic violence is one of those most underreported acts that has affected not only the household, but it affects the community and it affects the workplace. And the law has evolved, and we have to evolve with making changes in the legislation that critically deals with how we treat with the victims, but we must never forget the survivors. Yeah? And we have to make the changes to deal with what evolves and the level of support that is required. But I want to advance further that our review of this legislation must not be viewed in isolation, because we also have the opportunity to deal with what I consider our international obligations and standards. And I'm particularly talking about a piece of International Labour Organization Convention, the C-190, that I think we need to use the opportunity also to interface with, deliberate on, and encourage Jamaica's ratification to improving standards. As I've indicated, that this domestic violence is not a household issue, it's a community issue, but it also affects the workplace. And when you have an unsafe worker at home, it is not a healthy worker. It is not a productive worker. And so this domestic violence negatively affects our national development and our economic well-being. It affects families. And, you know, I look forward, Minister, to the level of probity, the level of interrogation, the number of recommendations that will come from stakeholders during these proceedings. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Member Gale. Certainly, this legislation will have far-reaching impact on domestic workers and what some have to endure in the workplace. So this will be far-reaching. I would like to invite Member Malahoo Ford to make an intervention at this point.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share the view that the Domestic Violence Act is one of great importance for the protection of families. I have worked with this law in other roles before I came to Parliament, and I was just thinking back when the Act was amended, I think in 2004, to insert the provisions dealing with common law spouses. A matter came before me when I was then the judge in the parish court of St. Elizabeth, as it is now termed. And I believe it was the first occupation order that was being made on that side under the Act. And it was against a very, very popular and wealthy businessman in a relationship that was uneven in economic terms, and it created quite a furor. But based on what came before the court, it was such a critical piece of legislation to offer protection at the time. I was just looking on the terms of reference to the committee against Standing Order 77-7, which confines deliberation to matter referred to the committee by the House. And it simply refers the matter of the Domestic Violence Act for consideration and report of its findings. And I note the reference to work done in a previous parliament. Some recommendations were implemented and some were not. And you're right that this will have to be considered as new work, but can very much be informed by what was previously done. One of the shortcomings of referencing matters to joint select committees for review is the absence of a timeline within the work, within which the work is to be done. And so my experience is that bills and acts are reviewed, and sometimes we come to the end of a session or the life of a parliament without the work being completed. So I join you in your call for expedition in the work. I believe that in considering the adequacy of the existing legal framework, it will have to be done in our cultural context, which tolerates verbal, emotional, and physical abuse, sometimes excusing it away as a demonstration of love, and also where those who should benefit from the protection of the law are sometimes discouraged. And I have heard of many cases where victims find the courage to go to the police station, and the response that they are met with by the investigating officers. And I acknowledge that training has taken place and we have made a lot of progress, but there is still a lot of work to be done, because any benefit that is provided by law will only go as far as it can be executed, implemented, and enforced. And so I am looking forward to being part of the work, and I hope that we will conclude the work as quickly as possible. Because it is an issue, it covers many issues that are always topical. And at the end of the day, there is always the call for something more to be done by the Parliament. So it's timely, and I commend you for also kickstarting so early in the life of the Parliament, since we were interrupted with the passage of the hurricane and dealing with matters related. These are
Thank you. Yeah,
comments.
thank you so much, Member Ford. Yes, please go ahead, Member Daly.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I too want to share the sentiments of my member Maluford in respect to the bold step that we have now taken to ensure that we implement this policy. But I want to hasten to say that I am very anxious equally to look at the education aspect of it. Because while we are here doing all these things, I happened to speak to some young men in my constituency, and I realized they are far away from knowing about this new piece of legislation. So we're going to continue probably piling up more ideas to be implemented for prevention, and the perpetrators are not aware. So I strongly believe that I would want to see this committee set out by first ensuring that there's a number of engagements, especially starting in the schools. And I must tell you, Madam Chair, that you'll be amazed to know what is happening in some of our schools right now. And therefore, for us to be able to deal with this kind of sexual harassment and domestic violence, we definitely have to stop believing that we are dealing with just children in the school and start looking at what is happening in the school and look at some of the root causes. So I am very happy for this, and my input will be solely on education, public awareness, in order that we'll be able to fully implement these laws.
Thank you so much, Member Daly. I don't see any hands up, but I would like to invite Senator Scott Motley to make comments here.
Thank you, Chair. I think it is well known how much I have welcomed the amendments that we did in 2023 and how much I've been looking forward to the convening of this Joint Select Committee. The fact of the matter is that 1 in 4 women are victims of inter-partner violence in Jamaica. And when we look at that, we see where broken families create a broken nation. And the outcome of having this sort of violence in homes is that we produce children who become adults who do not know how to interact in a society. So I really am hopeful that we will be able to conclude this as quickly as possible. And I notice, and thank you, Madam Chair, for your emphasis on swift. I know that you mean business, and I'm certainly looking forward to having this matter completed as quickly as possible. I just want to make one comment to you, Madam Chair, because you interact with the music community more than anybody else I know. and more than anybody else has ever done. And there is power in the music and power in the words of an artist. And perhaps even now, as we are deliberating and trying to strengthen this legislation, we could encourage our musical community to start using different kinds of references to women, so that we don't hear a woman being referred to as gal and in any kind of derogatory way, that we produce music which uplifts women and recognizes their place in the society. So I'm here, I'm willing to work. I look forward to the call, and I can assure you generally of my support. Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Senator. Thank you. We see whose hand is up? Welcome, Senator Fitzhenley. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to just confirm first that I'm being heard.
Yes, yes, thank you.
I wanted to confirm that I'm being heard clearly.
Yes.
I am. Well, Madam Chair, I want to just, in my brief comments, commend you on your leadership of this committee, a very important committee that has tremendous work to do in terms of treating with a scourge which is pervasive across society.
Senator,
are you hearing me?
Excuse me for interrupting, but could you put your camera on, please? You're live on PBCJ.
Oh, I'm actually in transit, so the camera might be a bit difficult.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but you're hearing me clearly.
All right, thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to commend you on your leadership of the committee, which proposes to fine-tune our laws in addressing a very serious scourge that is not unique to Jamaican society, but it certainly affects many cross-sections of Jamaican society. Indeed, men, women, children are victims of domestic violence and abuse. That's a matter of fact. I recall hearing the most honorable Prime Minister address a forum about 2 years ago where he quoted data which suggested that approximately 20% of complaints germane to domestic abuse involved men being victims. But it's impatient of debate that the majority of victims are women and oftentimes children. I recall reading a national women's health survey many years ago, I believe in 2018, that spoke to the fact that 28% of women have experienced gender-based violence. I believe that might allude to the 1 in 4 statistic that Senator Scott Motley spoke to a bit earlier. So it's a real problem across society. And I think it's important that men participate in the committee as well. I believe the membership of myself and Senator Gale is important because more of us should speak out against domestic violence, against everybody, and in particular, against our women. I believe if more men of prominence speak out against the scourge, it could go a far way in sending a clear message that domestic violence, intimate partner violence is not to be encouraged. We meet at a time, Madam Chair, when the issue of domestic violence is generating tremendous concern across society, and the issue of whether our laws are fit for purpose in treating with the issue in a manner where society is of the view that justice appears to be done, that justice is not only done, but appears to be done. I join you in concluding in being hopeful that this committee's work will be productive and that we will complete our duties in an expeditious and timeless manner. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution, Senator. I see the hand raised for Senator Rose Bennett Cooper. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just want to lend my voice to the call for effective continued communication with the Jamaican people. A very important part of what we need to achieve is a change in culture, a shift in the manner, the way in which, a mental shift, really, the way in which persons understand and see the results of their actions. An understanding that, a genuine understanding of the lasting impact that this kind of violence has on individuals. And particularly when it is being meted out in a space, as you, I believe it was you, Madam Chair, who mentioned this earlier, that this is a space, and these are spaces where you expect to be safe. And if these are the spaces that you end up being afraid of the persons around you, afraid of the environment, then you have a situation where individuals leave home, go to work, go out in the public space, and they're deathly afraid of returning to this place that is to be their space of safety.
Thank you, Senator.
So I am
yes, go ahead, continue.
Forward to the conversation.
Thank you. You're finished?
Yes, I wasn't sure if I was being heard because my connection is a little sketchy.
Yes, we're
So
hearing you.
I
We're hearing you.
Thank
so.
you. Yes,
Right.
I have concluded, Minister.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. I'm going to, I know that legal reform is online. I'm not sure who is on from legal reform. Could you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Nicole Wright.
Can you put your
one of
camera
the
on?
senior.
Can you put your camera
No,
on?
I'm not in a position to.
Okay, no
I'm
problem.
commuting, yes.
No
So I'm
problem.
one of the senior assistant directors of legal reform, and I'll be representing the department in this joint select committee.
All right, thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Good. So I'm going to invite Mrs. Robinson, Senior Director, Principal Director of the Bureau of Gender Affairs, to make some comments at this point, after which I will ask Ms. Blackwood, the Senior Legal Officer in the Ministry, to make comments as well. And then we will move into procedural matters. Okay? Mrs. Robinson?
So we are extremely happy that this particular committee is again... Oh, you're not hearing? Right. We are very happy at the Minister supporting you that this committee has now been reestablished, and we are now going to be able to complete what we've started. We were very happy, for example, for the report that was tabled coming out of the second round, where we had a big issue with the fact that there was no definition that would allow for persons to know exactly what we're speaking to and the parameters in terms of how we define domestic violence. And we were happy that for Section 2, we got a very extensive definition that included physical violence, emotional or psychological abuse, financial abuse, and sexual abuse. We believe that based on the fact that the definition is so broad, it will allow for a greater understanding of how domestic violence is nuanced. Because for some persons, and not having a definition, persons were not exactly sure what the parameters were. So that is one thing I'm extremely happy for. I'm also happy for the fact that for Section 3, in terms of the power of the court to grant protection orders, that we have expanded the number of persons who can actually provide support. We've had persons coming to us at the Bureau about a protection order that was taken out and was breached because this person thought that they had impunity, or that the protection order was lame. And so we are very happy that we have expanded the number of persons who can assist in that regard, as well as to increase the fine for the breach of a protection order. We believe that with this committee, and based on the fact that you've said timely and swift, we expect that the definition will work. We also expect that the recommendations that were not taken on board for one reason or another, that the considerations will be made so that by the time we complete this, we'll be able to have a legislation that is stronger and more robust and will match the gravity of the offense so that the persons who we are going to serve will feel as if we pay attention and we are making sure that they get exactly what is deserved. Because at the end of the day, we want justice to be served. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. Thank you so much. I'm going to invite Ms. Blackwood.
Thank you, Minister. Well, I support Ms. Robinson in what she has said. We have several matters which were not taken at the last time, and there are other suggestions, comments which are coming in, which we look forward to examining to see how we can strengthen this act. Also, in terms, someone mentioned that there needs to be education, and the Bureau and the Ministry, we have been doing that. We have been going to several organizations, institutions, telling them about the act, and we intend to continue to speak to institutions, organizations about the amendments we now have and what needs to be done by persons who can use this act to help to reduce the scourge. So the legal department stands ready to help the committee so we can have a robust discussion and a very strong act at the end of the day, Minister.
Thank you so much. I will quickly recognize Minister Juliet Cuthbert-Flynn, who has joined us online, to ask her to make a few comments, and then we will move directly into procedural matters.
Can you hear me? Am I being heard?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, I'm sorry I'm joining late. I was kicked off and then I got sidetracked. But let me just say that I'm very excited to be part of this Joint Select Committee. Let me also congratulate you, Madam Chair, for this meeting and all that you have done, to bring this very important matter to the fore. I believe that we are better off for having you, bringing this matter to the fore in Jamaica. I think once the Domestic Violence Act, once that came to the Parliament, I think, just after listening to persons in my constituency and persons on social media, how elated they were to know that we are actually debating this in the Parliament. Again, I think I'd mentioned this before in our other meeting with the parliamentarians of the importance of our voice. I think as women in the Parliament, to make sure that our voices are heard and forcefully about domestic violence. Again, it can go both ways, not just something against women, but also against men. And so it is very important that we discuss this. And again, I just want to say that I am happy to be part of this Joint Select Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I will now move into the procedural matters. Of course, the committee will be governed by our standing orders. In relation to a quorum, we'll follow the standing orders. 3 members plus the chair, right? So everyone agrees that we will follow that. That's a quorum, 3 members plus the chair. I also want to put to members and ask them to to, okay, so the standing order says 3, including the chair. And so that's fine, right? And then in relation to, in the absence of the chair, I'm asking the committee to accept a recommendation I'm about to make. In absence of the chair, Senator Johnson Smith would chair. So I hear no objection. And in the absence of the chair and Senator Johnson Smith, Senator Cavengale would chair. Good. So we have agreed on that going forward. So procedure in this committee, it reads, if the chairman is unable to be present at any meeting, committee shall elect another chair whose tenure of office shall be for the day of, you know, we have to rewrite this too. It says for the day of his election. So we have to look at the gender. We have to rewrite this, right? But, and as chair, I've asked the committee, and the committee has accepted, in my absence, Senator Johnson Smith, and in both our absence, Senator Cavengale. So I want to thank the committee for accepting that. And of course, the quorum, 3, including the chair. Right. So we will, the work of the committee, we will, I would say, have discussions outside of the margin of this meeting to determine the date when we can schedule. We do a schedule for our meetings so that we can meet on a regular basis, but to determine how regular and the days in which we'll meet, depending on the availability of the chamber and the schedule for other committee meetings. The committee will invite submissions relevant to its deliberations, written or by appearance before the committee, and will establish subcommittees or working groups where required. And I would like to recommend at this meeting that we ask member Marlene Mallow-Fort we immediately establish a subcommittee that would treat with cross-cutting legislations that would impact on this piece of legislation. We want to move quickly, and we want the work to be done in a way where we're really very comprehensive. Member Johnson Smith mentioned earlier about other legislations, and we, in fact, would wish at some point for Mrs. Petrona Celia Brown from the Office of the Parliamentary Counsel, who is online, to speak to the possibility. And certainly we would want to give the responsibility to Member Mallow-Fort to sort of lead on that with a subcommittee to ensure that nothing falls between the cracks and that we are able to pull it all together. You wanted to make a comment, member? Yes, go ahead, please.
Seeking some clarity, Madam Chair. The membership of this subcommittee is to be determined by what means? Just seeking clarification on how the membership of the subcommittee is to be determined. Volunteers, ask, oh.
Well, And I really should call it a working group, not a subcommittee, a working group. And we would ask you to come back to us at the next meeting with recommendations as to how. Of course, Mrs. Brown, Mrs. Cecilia Brown, I see your hand up. She'll make a comment on that. But I see you working closely or consulting with the technical legal group in this regard. So go ahead, Ms. Cecilia Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members and colleagues. There are about 25 recommendations, Chair, about over 25 that were made in that report of 2018 when we had reviewed the Sexual Offences Act. And I think that is where we can start looking at how we can implement whatever recommendations were made, whatever consequential amendments we may accept. Senator Johnson Smith spoke about the repeal of, I think it was Section 5 of the Sexual Offences Act, which dealt with marital rape, because that was one of the recommendations. So I think we can start there by looking at the report from that time and building on that.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Minister Johnson Smith.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to thank Mrs. Seeley Brown, and also just to make the point that the intention is to advance the provisions, yes, and not to stick to a form. So I think the most important thing is to not only look at the report, but to actually check with the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of National Security, both of which are charged with various aspects of the legislation that is outstanding. Minister Chuck had on a recent occasion told me that proposed amendments were in fact significantly advanced and almost ready to go to legislative committee. If we should see what sits within that amendment bill, because you wouldn't want to interrupt that process if it is in fact sufficiently advanced. If, however, we find on further inquiry, that they are in fact languishing in between files or between ministries or departments, then I am suggesting that we as a committee rescue them and bring them home here, where we will take good care of them and bring them to fruition. But so it's not to say we want to undertake consequential amendments as a matter of, it is that let's identify where we can harvest complementary work, but if it is already advanced, let's support it where it is and focus on what is already before us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Noted and agreed, member.
Yes, so that's very clear, the path we're taking, because we really want this piece of legislation to be comprehensive, to ensure that nothing is falling between the cracks, that it's also complementary, and that we move expeditiously to see this legislation become, become in force. At this point, I would like to ask. I think Senator Scott Motley was part of the team that worked earlier, and I would just like to invite to hear our comments on the discussion we're currently having.
I endorse exactly what Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith has said about the approach to be taken in relation to the amendments which we're seeking to do. But I also believe that Mrs. Seeley Brown's approach, that is to start with the outstanding recommendations from the 2018 report, is a good basis for deliberations, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. There were some very important recommendations which had been made, which we just never had the opportunity to take on board. So if we meld the two suggestions, I think that we have an ideal way in which we can deal with this matter efficiently and effectively, Chair.
Thank you so much. We will circulate the previous report, and I think there is a matrix with the recommendations coming from the various entities. We will also write to the various entities and ask if they wish to make further submissions. Just before I take you, Minister Johnson-Smith, I will take Senator Gale, then Minister Johnson-Smith, and then Member Malahoo Ford.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. These recommendations that never made it on board, it would be good as part of supporting that listing for those of us who are now coming in to understand and appreciate why they were never taken on board, because that would be helpful in making a determination whether or not they are still relevant, could have been taken, or totally rejected.
Yes, well, that document exists. The matrix, the recommendations, the entities from whom they came, and the comments of the committee. So we'll be able to review those as well. And again, invite the various stakeholders who were invited before. Some may choose to come again. Some may just indicate that their positions remain the same, and we would be in a better position to just review and make recommendations to Parliament in our report. Go ahead, Minister Johnson-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. In support of your approach, but in seeking to maybe sharpen the pencil on the approach, may I suggest that we expressly write to the groups to ask whether they continue to stand by the report, by their previous submission, such that we can consider it in that context, or if they have anything to add, rather than leaving it at large and then we determine how to treat with and enter into any duplicative work. We should really try and narrow the request so that we're not starting from scratch again, because it's a fair bit of work was undertaken, but it was a discussion stage that was a bit protracted, and some of the policy finalization that was needed. So it's really the work of analysis of what has already been submitted, rather than to take, the usual 2 months to wait for things to come in. And then I'm hoping we can have a shorter timeline, because the questions up front will be more specific, and the window for any additional stakeholders to write, therefore need not be as long. If you hadn't submitted before and wanted to submit now.
Thank you, Minister Johnson-Smith. That would be the context within which the letters written to the stakeholders would say, you have made your previous submissions, and, within that context, right, is there any further? If not, we will consider, right. That would be. Member Malahoo Ford, please.
Further to that point, I'm wondering whether we should consider reviewing the submissions first, before inviting members of the public to resubmit on the matter, just from a time efficiency perspective, and through you as chair, with the assistance of your technical team, to look whether any of the recommendations may be impacted by the passage of time and circumstances between when they were made and the lack of implementation, to know before we actually go external to the public. Some of us were not part of the previous committee, and because it's a previous parliament, the work is being guided or having regard to that body of work done. But it's the same bill, save and except for those amendments that were taken on board, just to move efficiently. have the report looked at, the recommendations made, perhaps a little summary of that report to say there were 10 recommendations, 5 were implemented in this act, the remaining 5 cover that, whether any area of the act was not explored in the previous deliberations, and you invite very specific matters. And when you come to look at the recommendations that were previously made, to consider whether the non-implementation and the passage of time may have impacted them, and that is where you may get a fresh perspective from those who previously submitted on the matter.
I note your recommendation. I should, however, indicate that we have work to do because we do have submissions that have been made that we have not yet reviewed from the previous meetings, from the previous committee. And we also have a matrix to review. So we have submissions that we have not yet looked at. We have a matrix of submissions that were previously made coming out of the last dispensation. However, as a courtesy, we could still write. They can respond to us. We can determine the way forward based on their response and the scheduling of them. But we will not wait on responses to start doing our work.
John, since not everyone in this committee is aware of how the work was conducted in the last committee, it may be helpful for us to get even a one-pager to say what was done. Just the point that you made, that there were presentations made that were not considered. We wouldn't have known that, those of us who were not part of the committee. So a useful recap, as it were, of what took place, to include that and to list those who were invited, who submitted, but whose submissions were not considered.
So that information, Member Malawford, we will pull that information together and we will circulate to members. All right? So, member? Member, are you okay? Well, we will circulate the information so you will be brought fully up to date because it's quite a lot. And to spend a meeting just doing that would take up a lot of time. We will spend our meetings, remember? We will spend our meetings reviewing the submissions we have not yet reviewed. We will review the matrix and we will provide you with a report on what the work that has been previously done.
Have in place a ministerial legislative team comprising the legal officers and the policy officers? Still? Okay.
We will provide this committee with all the information necessary. The technical team, the members, and the support team that is in our parliament. Okay? So, for example, the domestic violence at the Joint Select Committee has Ms. Cohen as the clerk for the committee. We have for the caucus a different clerk. And so any matter to do with the Joint Select Committee on Domestic Violence, it is Ms. Cohen, who actually heads the team of clerks in Parliament here. Okay? Right. I think at this point, I've kept members long enough in the chamber, and we have achieved quite a lot. We have settled in a very uncontroversial way or procedure to follow, and we have established the persons who will chair in my absence, persons who will chair in the absence of Senator Johnson Smith, Senator Cavan Gale, and in the absence of both myself and Minister Johnson Smith. Member Malahoo Ford will take on the responsibility to pull together, working along, consulting with the technical team on the cross-cutting legislations, what we may have to try to incorporate or what we are satisfied is sufficiently advanced that, you know, will be enacted to complement what we are doing, and that we will be moving expeditiously to bring this act into force. So at this point, I just want to make my closing remarks. If there is no other intervention from members in the chamber, members online, I will just quickly wrap up here to say that I want to thank you all for making yourselves available as I bring this session to a close. My deep appreciation, your combined contribution rooted in your expertise, your compassion, and your unwavering resolve has enriched our collective understanding and fortified our shared purpose. What stood out most clearly today is consensus that protection must be proactive, enforcement must be consistent, and support systems must be accessible to every person in every corner of Jamaica. And during the upcoming months, we will establish important groundwork for reviewing important recommendations which will strengthen monitoring mechanisms. This is intended to improve interagency collaboration, expand community-based prevention efforts, and ensure that victims and survivors are treated with the requisite support, empathy, and efficiency rather than further trauma when they seek help. Series of actions which we will take over the upcoming over the upcoming months will guide further legislative refinement, policy enhancement, and resource allocation. They will serve as a blueprint for Jamaica in which no one is left unprotected because of geography, economic circumstance, or fear of disbelief. I leave this meeting encouraged, and I think we all leave this meeting encouraged. You have shown that when Jamaicans of goodwill come together across party lines, professions, and perspectives, we can move mountains. So I'm really looking forward to us moving expeditiously in putting this new Domestic Violence Act in place. We may even look at a name change. We don't know what will come out of these deliberations, but I want members to feel free to put your recommendations, to review recommendations that will be made to us, and to ensure that we make the right decisions in our recommendations to Parliament for this legislation to be enacted. I want to thank you all so much. So on the motion for adjournment, moved by Minister Johnson Smith, seconded by Member Denise Daly. I now thank everyone, members in the chamber, members online, and for the technical team in the chamber and online. And now this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you. Good work.
July, your NHT home improvement loan will increase to $3.5 million for qualifying applicants. Your government is caring for you.
Motorists, as Minister of Justice, I appeal to you, obey the road code, pay your ticket on time, and only go to court if the ticket is being contested. Close to 80% of matters coming to the parish courts are for traffic breaches. Let's work together to make our roads safe and ease the burden on our courts.
Hey, just a reminder, your mental health is just as important as your physical.